Hello, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. So it's semi-final time at the Rugby World Cup. The competition is going to be over before we know it, but I don't want to think about that. I want to think about New Zealand and Argentina naming their teams for that match at the Stade de France on Friday, because they've done that today, and that's what I'm talking about in the video. Looking at the team news for both sides, although there aren't loads of changes from their quarter-final wins, and then also looking at the game and just my general thoughts on both teams. So drop a comment down below. Does anyone out there genuinely think Argentina are going to win this game? They're dangerous, but do you think they can do it? Let me know in the comments. Make sure you like the video as well, and also make sure you're subscribed to the channel. But let's get into it. So starting with the All Blacks, fresh from their historic, sensational, chuck whatever superlatives you want at it, but their victory over Ireland in the quarterfinals, which I think I'm still getting over, in all honesty. It was an utterly bruising, ridiculously good game of rugby. I know for the Ireland fans, not so much, but in terms of the spectacle, it was unbelievable. So only a couple of changes for them from the team that beat Ireland. So Mark Talaire comes back in. He replaces Leicester Fainga'anuku, who drops out of the 23 entirely, and Sam Whitelock comes into the starting team. Brodie Retallick drops to the bench. Mark Talaire, you will remember, was not included for the quarter-final team because he broke team protocols. I don't think we've had much more information other than that. I think he was late. He stayed out too late. I don't know how late, but anyway, he comes back in, and it was a selection call, certainly for that quarterfinal, that Ian Foster and those coaches got right. In fact, the selections in general for the All Blacks for that game against Ireland, they got absolutely spot on, because the performances from everyone in that team was sensational. There wasn't anyone that had a bad game, and they needed it. And they'll need another good game against the Pumas. Maybe they don't quite have to reach those levels, but I suppose that's the danger for the All Blacks. You have almost just climbed Everest. You have just played in one of the greatest games of rugby we've ever seen. Physically incredibly tough, mentally such a high and such a stressful game as well. You've then got to go 6 games later. I'll get onto that a bit later in the video. In terms of that team, not much rotation, which is really intriguing given the nature of the match against Ireland. It's going to take an awful lot out of those players physically and mentally. I suppose what it shows is a respect to Argentina and a respect to the competition, but I perhaps thought that they would be tempted to rotate a little bit more. I wondered whether they would have felt like they could perhaps try and freshen up their team a little bit more and still be the favourites to win the game. But it shows respect to Argentina. It shows respect to the stage of the competition they are at. And I suppose it's also the time where they're thinking it's time to trust the process. I think it's an All Blacks team and a team selection that reflects how settled that team now is. I think they feel very comfortable with their different options, which actually I don't think was the case at the start of the World Cup. I think if you cast your minds back to that point, there was an awful lot more debate about selection and who should start and how they should use the different players in that team. Now it feels to me like they're very settled. And on the one hand, I think that is a natural progression across a tournament when you get yourselves to a semi-final stage, particularly some of the teams that the All Blacks have had to play. You get to a point where you have a pretty good idea of what your strongest 23 is, with maybe just a few changes in there. So it's a natural progression. But I think it also shows the great job that the coaching job and this squad of players have done, given maybe where they were after the France game to where they are now, having just beaten Ireland. The one interesting thing for me is, again, no Cam Roigard. Finlay Christie once more. I said before the Ireland game I thought a lot of the selection was down to experience. Maybe that is still the case. Samisoni Takiaho comes in place of Dane Coles amongst the replacements. Outside of that, it's basically the same. So is it still experience they're going for? It's still knockout rugby. There's been a lot of talk over the last few days that the World Cup is different. What you need in these matches is different. So maybe that's the reason. I just thought Roigard looked really, really good. I still think that he is the guy for the future, possibly for the All Blacks in that 9 jersey, but he's not part of the 23 once again, which, yeah, for me is quite fascinating. The other thing I think for New Zealand this week, and I've hinted at it already, is where their energy is. And Aaron Smith spoke about it after the Ireland game, of the heart and the effort. And I think rugby is a sport, perhaps more than a lot of others, where desire, heart, effort, those sorts of things, wanting it more than your opponents can go a long way. And I wonder whether there was part of that for the All Blacks against Ireland in terms of the revenge. I know the players said that it wasn't personal, but Ardie Surveyor said that he'd been keeping receipts, I think was the expression he used, which I quite liked. after Ireland beat them in New Zealand the other year. New Zealand reached such a peak with that performance, and I do think emotionally it's incredibly difficult to back that up. So it's kind of, where are they? Where have they been this week? How has their preparation been? And that's why I suspected they might have rotated more than they have here. I think sometimes you're better off almost bringing some fresh legs and players into the team that didn't have to deal with that sort of burden. It's something England and Eddie Jones spoke about after the 2019 World Cup final, where they had this such unbelievable performance in the semi-final, and then they struggled to back it up, and they probably kept the team the same when they should have rotated more. So I still think the All Blacks will have enough to beat Argentina, but I wondered whether they might have factored in some of those things I've mentioned. But it's still a really strong side. It respects the Pumas and it respects the competition. Let's get on to Argentina. Just one change for them from their victory over Wales. So Bertranou comes in at scrum half, Gonzalo Bertranou, and he replaces Thomas Kubeli, who started against the Welsh. So just a change at 9. In terms of this Argentina squad, it is a team that is experienced massively. 7 players that reached the World Cup semi-final in 2015. So there's guys that have been there and done it. 6 of the players in the squad have featured in both their previous wins over New Zealand. So they have experience there. It's just so difficult, isn't it? Given the performance we saw New Zealand put in against Ireland, and what we've seen from Argentina, even though they look much better against Wales, they still haven't been amazing in this World Cup. What to expect from Argentina? And they will be written off. The All Blacks will be favourites. I think New Zealand will win. But having said that, what case is there for Argentina to win this game? Well, where are they at the moment? What you would say for Argentina, this is a huge opportunity for them. They won't take for granted being in a World Cup semi-final whatsoever. And we know the passion, the emotion, the levels I think that Argentinian teams can reach when they get this sort of opportunity. And it's not going to be easy. And I started making some notes of how do Argentina win this game. First of all, they have to keep in touching distance, because they're almost, I would say, more than possibly any other team, certainly any other of the top teams, if they stay in touch, the belief in this team will grow. And I think that is hugely something we saw against Wales. Wales 10-0 up in that quarter-final, playing a lot of good rugby, 3 lineouts in the opposition red zone. They mess all of them up. Had Wales been able to push that scoreboard on at that stage, I think that is the if-only moment from that quarter-final from a Welsh perspective. Argentina chipped away at the score. They took their 3 points, and they got themselves back in the game, and you could feel, or it sensed it watching it, the belief that grew in that Argentinian side. So I think that's a big thing for the All Blacks. Start quickly. Don't give them hope, because I think if you give them a bit of a mountain to climb, then it's going to become a even taller order than it already is for Argentina. But they do have goal kickers, talking about chipping away at the scoreline. Boffelli is one of the best in the world. Nicolas Sanchez, the wily old veteran on the replacements, is very, very good and has been very, very good from the tee in this World Cup. So Argentina have threats. I don't think the All Blacks will take them for granted, but even so, New Zealand will be, understandably, the heavy favourites for this game. Can you see Argentina doing it? How do they do it, if so? What sort of game plan, what sort of style of match best suits them? I think similar probably to what we'll talk about and what I'll talk about when it comes to the other semi-final of England against South Africa. I think they probably need it to be a fairly slow pace to the game. They don't want it to be too quick. They want it to be quite stop-start. A bit of an ugly match really probably suits Argentina, but with the strength of the All Black side and the way in which we've seen them cut some teams open in this World Cup, if they get that attack moving forward, then life might be pretty difficult for Argentina, even though they have a fairly recent history of beating the All Blacks. You look back to the opening game of the Rugby Championship earlier this year, where the All Blacks were just brilliant in that first half and blew them away, and the game was done by halftime. They will be hoping for something similar on this occasion. So let me know what you think. Does anyone out there give Argentina a chance of beating the All Blacks? The only question mark really, I think, as I've said already, is where the All Blacks are emotionally after that game against Ireland, and to try and replicate that is very, very difficult. But I suspect they will have too much. So I'll leave it there for now. Let me know what you make of these two teams. Were you expecting more rotation, maybe in particular from a New Zealand point of view? You can put all those thoughts in the comment section. You can like the video as well and subscribe to the channel, because I always really appreciate that. Nice one. I'll see you in the next one.